Hello, everyone. Good evening. This is Juliano. We are here for one more talk organized by the mentoring program, Living by Translation, Viver de Tradução. And today we have a very special guest, Melissa Hebin. She is the co-owner of SpanTech Translations, a small translation agency in the United States. She has 7 years of experience in project management, human resources, and business systems management. And she's going to talk about the perspective of a translation agency on the market. Okay, so Melissa, please, you may start.
All right, thank you, Juliano. Hello and hola to everyone out there. As Juliano said, I am the co-owner of a small translation agency. We're a family business. We've been around since 1992, so quite a while. And I'd just like you to keep in mind that everything I say will be from the perspective of one small translation agency. So other agencies and bigger ones will likely have different outlooks and methods. And I'll try to speculate on other agencies based on my experience and on our perspective, but at the end of the day, it's only my observation. So to give you an idea of how big our scope is, we work with over 300 linguists in roughly 25 languages. So that's languages, not language pairs. Our top fields are legal, medical, technical, and business/financial. And we do often get work in other fields, but those other fields tend to be a little more sporadic and tend to be limited to certain language pairs. So a lot of other fields that we get work in from our clients that would include official and government documents, including correspondence. So for example, Department of Labor and Industries dealing with workers' compensation claims. They might send us a large list of correspondence between people who were injured on the job and their claim adjusters. So others would be general operations and reporting, such as survey responses. Say a large corporation hands out a survey or is trying to translate reviews of a certain product in order to improve their manufacturing and get feedback. That's a common one. Others are journalism, newspaper articles, web articles, scientific documents and studies, and marketing and advertising, such as websites, marketing copy, that sort of thing. So in my presentation, I'm going to go over our clients and the kind of work that we do and our experience in the workflow and the things that are important to us and what we find important in translators, how we find our translators, that sort of thing. I understand that the audience has you folks have a wide variety of experience levels. There are some of you that are new to the industry and some that have been working for 30 years or more. So I'm going to try and make it as well-rounded as possible, and I'll try to leave some time at the end for questions and answers. So as far as our clients are concerned, we have two general types of clients. The first one is larger translation agencies. They make up the bulk of our work. They send us large batches of quick turnaround or ongoing work, and we, as the middleman, as a smaller translation agency, save them the work of individually divvying up large volumes of work into smaller assignments. So we'll take large volumes of work and assign them out to individual linguists, and we do much more of the groundwork of dealing individually with linguists. So they tend to send us, one client will send us a lot of work in many different language pairs, and their deadlines tend to be very inflexible, and our on-time delivery metrics with them are important. So that means that they tend to be large corporations with databases of different vendors that they work with, including us. And we will have a profile with metrics on it saying our general quality level, and their system will automatically log our delivery time. So on-time deliveries are very important. And so we bend over backwards to make sure everything gets in on time with these agencies. So ultimately, anything that we deliver late goes on our permanent record. And then if we're found to be unreliable according to their metrics, they will send us less work. And then all of our linguists and all of our language pairs get less work. So we will often pull overnighters to get things in on time and make sure that the quality is good. So our work is to bridge that gap. So managing linguists, managing expectations, and ultimately making sure everything gets in on time. The second type of client is direct clients. So a small fraction of our work comes from them. And an example of a direct client might be someone who wants their novel translated because they're trying to market their novel, or a government agency that works with us directly, or just any client where they are ultimately the party that needs the work translated and not an agency acting as the middleman. So it's much more difficult to find and market to direct clients. The advantage in working for agencies is that once you're on their vendor list, you're with them, they do the work of finding the projects, and then they send you the projects. So projects with direct clients tend to be more flexible and interactive. So there is more room for communication between the translator and the client, and more room for better mutual understanding. But again, relatively hard to find direct clients. So how we work with linguists is our approach as a small agency is relationship-based. Our decision in who to work with is very much based on our relationships with our linguists. This is something that's built up over time through working together as a team and getting a feel for their strengths and weaknesses. Our longtime trusted linguists, such as Giuliano, are much more likely to be assigned regular ongoing projects because we have a sense of trust and loyalty built up with them. So in the same way, we know that it's a two-way street, and linguists are more or less likely to work with us or go the extra mile or do their work extra carefully, for example, if our relationship with them is beneficial to them and if they like us as a client. So we treat our linguists like human beings. We pay them on time. We don't try to squeeze unreasonable rates out of them. We don't try to maximize our profit margins at the detriment of our linguists, etc. And so there are cases, for example, when there's a lot of urgent work to be done, when there's a lot that needs to be done quickly, and we really want a linguist to take a lot of work, but ultimately it's up to that linguist's decision how much work they're going to take and what their rate is. And we never try to get more work out of them than what they can take or push back too hard on their rate. If it's a rate that we can't afford, we'll let them know. So that's how small agencies treat their linguists differently from larger agencies. A lot of larger agencies, again, are very metrics based, and their willingness to work with a vendor is much more dependent on the bottom line, on getting the lowest rate. So yeah, if a linguist chronically takes on more than they can handle and they end up delivering later subpar work, it will erode our trust in them. So it's important not to overpromise your ability to do the amount of work that you can do, because if you deliver late, if you deliver poor quality, it's going to damage the client's trust in you. And that's in the case with bigger clients. If you fail on a few projects, they'll just mark you as unreliable or low quality and go on to the next person, and they're less likely to be willing to work with you on things, on issues that you might have. So that's the benefit of working with a smaller agency. Though larger agencies may provide more volume, try and get both if you can. So as far as getting into the industry, I'd like to give you my perspective on getting into the industry and what it's like hiring linguists in our case. So translation as an industry, translation as an industry has lower barriers to entry and less regulation than most careers. So agencies rely on testing and performance assessment to determine which linguist to work with. So there is the ATA. It helps to be a member of the ATA. If you have ATA certification, you can ask for higher rates because there's been a definitive testing and approval of your quality level. So, and there are cases where ATA certification is required, say by certain governmental entities or by courts. There are certain institutions that require ATA certification. So if you are ATA certified, great. If you can get ATA certified, I would recommend it. It certainly makes you a lot more marketable. And it is, so back onto testing. It's very common for agencies, especially large ones, to offer tests in their hiring process. I would go so far as to say this is a requirement across the board. And it would be uncommon, it would be very rare to find an agency that doesn't test their linguists. And I would say that is even irresponsible. The reasoning for this is there are a lot of fraudulent linguists out there who misrepresent themselves, so the test is a necessary evil. There are many thousands of fake CVs out there, fake credentials and fake reviews. There are many, many scammers out there who steal CVs, as I'm sure most, if not all of you, are aware. So we rely on testing to make sure that whatever linguist we're talking to is the real deal, and specifically that they are skilled in their specialty field that they claim to be able to do. So as you know, just because you're good in general translation doesn't mean that you can, for example, translate a clinical trial. So at the end of the day, it's the only surefire way to prove that you have the skills that you claim. So think of it as a job interview. On paid versus unpaid testing, this is a hot button issue among linguists. There are linguists who don't do unpaid tests because they think it's a scam, or because they think that the agency is trying to get free work from them. And that greatly decreases their chances of getting hired. So even if you have a lot of good reviews on Pros or another platform, good reviews can be faked and credentials can be faked, CVs can be faked. It helps, good reviews and all that help get your foot in the door, but you're still gonna get tested because that's the only way to validate your skill. Think about it this way. In other fields, people take half a day for an interview, but they don't ask the potential employer to pay them for the interview. So if you're thinking of it as a job interview, in any other field, you wouldn't ask the interviewer for payment. So but there are limitations. A free translation test should only be a page or two tops. I would recommend doing free tests of around 300 to 400 words. If a client tries to get you to do an unpaid test of 1,000 words, that is very questionable. If you are hesitant to do a free test because you think that they may just be trying to get the free work, then ask them if you'll be able to get a copy of your reviewed text before you start the work. If they're getting it reviewed, there will be a marked up document by which they will judge your quality. We always provide these for our linguists when they are doing unpaid tests. Don't be afraid to ask for this. It's not a big hassle for them if they will already be grading you. We do try to test our linguists whenever possible with live paid work. This can be done if we have ongoing or low rush work that is easily split up into manageable chunks. Sometimes though, we need to hire for upcoming projects that we don't have access to yet, and we may be testing dozens of people, especially if we're expanding into a new language pair. So in that case, we do turn to small unpaid tests, but we keep those unpaid tests to about 300 to 400 words. And we do tend to test for per individual specialty field. So for example, if we need a large volume of scientific work done, we're going to test our linguists with small samples of scientific work. So I wanted to go into marketing yourself as a linguist. Tip number 1 would be write a good CV, make it look really good, proofread it. Agencies and direct clients who are looking to hire translation freelancers usually don't have much to go from other than the linguist CV and their tested quality. A good CV does a lot to get you in the door. Make sure that it highlights your specialties. It's important to differentiate yourselves from the droves of linguists who just do general work. So if you want to specialize in medical, for example, really drill down on your medical experience, even if it isn't translation specific. So if you just had a medical related internship, took a emergency medical training courses, or if you've just done a lot of work involving medical records, do mention that. List your specialty fields near the top of your CV. Hiring managers want to know at a glance what kinds of projects they'll be able to send you. Take the time to format it nicely. After you write it, put it away for a day or two, and then come back to it and proofread it. Give yourself the mental space to forget it a little bit so that you can come back at it with fresh eyes. And you might catch errors that you included before. It may be the only first impression you get, so make sure it communicates your level of organization and professionalism. And references are helpful. Some agencies require references and some don't, but regardless, it's a good thing to have them on hand and it looks very good on a CV. And do provide those references to hiring managers. Tip number 2, register in online databases so you can be found. This is extremely important. Our go-to database for finding linguists is Prose or Prozee. I've typically only ever seen it in writing, so it's hard to say. We use Prose to search for linguists. If you want to come up earlier in search results, buying a paid membership will do that, and it'll automatically make you seem more professional than those who don't. Fill out your profile as completely as possible. A profile picture helps in making you seem more human and relatable rather than just being another database entry. It also makes you look more active and less like you could potentially be a bot, since there are unfortunately a lot of scam bots giving us constant emails and constantly trying to contact us. Sorry, I have to find this. So it's really, really important, back to the specialty fields, back to differentiating yourself. It's really important to select your specialty fields when filling out your profile. For example, if you're marketing yourself as a medical specialist, select the little text box that says medical, general, or medical, whatever the field is. And we do search according to specialty fields. These databases allow us to search based on those checkboxes. So make sure you fill them out. They're going to improve your search rankings. Prose has job postings that you can apply to. The link is www.prose.com/translation-jobs. Check them often to see what work gets posted and send in a quick application and CV to see if you get picked. This is a really good way to start building up new clients, and it's a good way to make that initial contact. And you're going to have a better return than just sending out a bunch of emails that way. So bonus points in the cases of applying for job postings, bonus points if you can be one of the first responders. If a project manager is going to Prose to find linguists, It's likely because they need to fill a quick turnaround deadline, but their regular linguists aren't available to do it. Being immediately available for a quick turnaround job is the best way to get your foot in the door via this method. If a client is happy with your work, ask them to post a review to your Pros account or to any other online account you may have. Upwork, Translators Cafe, what have you. Good reviews help. They help you get your foot in the door. So as I said, some other databases that you can use are Upwork and Translators Cafe. Those are two that we do use intermittently, though Pros is what we most commonly use. We've found that linguists from Pros tend to charge more than linguists on Upwork. So if you go on Upwork, you're going to be competing against lowballers. By the same token, Upwork linguists tend to be less professional and lower quality than the ones on Pros. Still, we do occasionally use it if we need to. We don't often use Translators Cafe, but we have found linguists there, so it doesn't hurt to basically copy and paste your Pros profile onto that database. There's also an online CAT tool called SmartCat, www.smartcat.ai. This is an online database that's also a CAT tool. You can create a profile and be searched for and assigned to translation projects that are done through their online interface. We do use this as well. Our director loves it. It's a more automated but less personal way to get connected with clients. So SmartCat would be more something that we would use for a quick fix when we need something quickly placed. But again, doing a quick small job for a client is a great way to get your foot in the door and introduce yourself to them so that you can improve your rapport with them and eventually be on one of their trusted vendors. So, as I said, these are a few of the most common tools that we use, but there are more out there. I'm sure that different companies use different websites and tools. So this is not the end all be all of all the options that you have. These are just the ones that we use. Tip number 3, things that project managers look for in a linguist. The two most important qualities are quality of work and timeliness or reliability. I can't say which is more important than the other, because ultimately both of them will determine whether we will be able to get the project in on time. If a linguist is good quality, it means we're not going to have to redo their work or suddenly have to get all of their work reviewed in the few hours between their delivery and our client's deadline. Our margins between the time that our translators deliver something to us and the time that we have to deliver it to our client is often just a few hours. So when we have a deadline, it's super important to deliver it on time or early. Extra points for early delivery, but if you don't deliver it early because you're proofreading it and making sure that it's good, that's great. So as far as quality, the translation industry is still a wild west of sorts. That's an American idiom, but by wild west, I mean it's still very much unregulated and pretty wild and not a lot of oversight. So there's very little standardization and very little infrastructure out there to regulate or normalize it. So the standard practice for a translation agency is to have them sign an NDA and a subcontractor agreement, then send them the test translation and grade their test translation.
No.
The quality of their test translation will determine how much we can trust your quality and therefore how we treat you as a linguist, how we anticipate your behavior. If you very reliably turn things in on time and you have a low rate, then we might take on a translator for their lower rate if we can afford to proofread it, if they're the only one available, and we can give them a deadline that's sooner than we normally would, for example. So if you have higher quality, we will be able to give you more time to work on the assignment. If you have lower quality, we might still work with you as long as you're very timely and very reliable, and we can afford to proofread your work afterward. Or not proofread, but do a full review, because we always do a quality assessment at the end of every assignment before delivering it to our client. The best way to boost your quality is to be really good at researching. If you don't know some advanced medical terminology, for example, and you want to get into medical work, do research on medical terminology. Know where to look. Get involved in the medical field in some way or another. If it's hard to find in a simple Google search, there are some research tools you can use, like the following, and I'll list them. Some that I know of that work really well are the PROS term search and forums. That is www.pros.com/search. Lingui, number 2 is Lingui, www.lingui.com. And it's important to note that Lingui is just a database that searches terms in their translated use. Obviously, different terms may translate differently depending on different contexts. So it's important to note the context of the term and how it's translated in Lingui, and not just blindly use the first result that you see. But it can be a very useful tool. The third and last resource that I'm going to list is Word Reference, Dictionary and Forums. That's www.wordreference.com. And if there's a chat or a text, some sort of text chat, I can post those links and resources after the talk. So those can really help if you're having trouble with terminology, if you're stuck on something. Those can be absolutely useful. So second, but not necessarily second, tied with quality is timeliness and reliability. Many agencies even value those over quality of work. We tend to value quality very highly, but timeliness is very, very important. So as I told you, the industry works on very tight deadlines. As a middleman agency, we have very little time between your deadline and our clients, so you absolutely have to get your work in on time. So a late delivery early on in a relationship with a new client may mean the end of that working relationship. If, for example, you're assigned a test translation and you deliver that test translation late, it looks very, very bad. So make sure you get everything in on time. And the less that you have worked with that client, the more important it is that you get it in on time. One note about timeliness is if you're quick to answer emails, project managers will tend to send you job offers first, because they'll most likely know right away whether or not you'll be able to take that job. So the first ones, say we send out a job offer email, the first person to answer that email will be more likely to get it, just because it will be less likely to be taken. If you make a habit of being one of the first people to answer, then that project manager may just send the job offer to you to see if you're available before sending it to everyone else, because they'll expect that they'll be able to get an answer from you quickly. And if they, sometimes we send off job offers to many linguists at a time because we're on a tight deadline and we need to get something covered fast. So many linguists get annoyed at this, and rightfully so, because we're getting it all out there at once, and then we might get several responses at once. We do this because of tight deadlines. If there is something that has less tight of a deadline, we will try to send out requests to individual linguists one at a time. As I said, if you're someone who answers quickly, you'll be much more likely to get someone who gets individually asked. So another thing is freelance work, as many of you know, can mean odd working hours. Make sure you don't bite off more than you can chew, because once you accept a project, you will be expected to finish it. And this is a tip more for the entry-level linguists. So if you accept a job, you'll be expected to finish it on deadline, regardless of the hours you'll have to work. If you accept too much work and you have to work overnight, that's on you for accepting the work, because different people work at different rates. Some linguists can only do 1,500 words per day. Some linguists I've seen put out 4,000-5,000 words a day, because it's just their specialty field. They're really good at it. They're used to seeing it. They have templates, that sort of thing. So if you're working on a job that's due in the morning and you've already worked a long day, I'd still recommend finishing that job and sending it to your client before signing off for the night. They will not have much patience for a linguist who causes the timetable to fall behind because they took on too much work and didn't feel like working late. Since you're the one who determines how much work you accept and you know how much work you can get done per hour, you're the one in control of this. And a project manager will respect your stated work that you can take. If they don't accept that, then that's a problem on their end. So if you can only take part of a project before the client's deadline, or say if you bite off more than you can chew and you realize halfway through the assignment that you won't be able to finish it, let them know ahead of time, as far in advance as possible. It's fine to take on a little more that you can, or to take on sometimes a lot more than you can, or to have a family emergency, for example, and suddenly you can't take on as much. If you give your project manager a lot of lead time to replace part of it, they won't have a problem with that, as long as they have the time to place it with someone else, and as long as they don't have to extend their deadline with their client. So just be honest, be straight up with your project manager. Always be, especially if you don't have a good idea of how much work you can do, or if you're working in a specialty field that you don't often work in, be checking in with yourself. Check your own deadline, check your timetable. Try to be realistic and err on the side of caution when you are taking a large amount of work, and don't be afraid to tell them that they need to replace some of it. It's really fine as long as they have advance notice. So on to the next thing. If you're late on a project, don't make up excuses for why unless you have solid proof of it. Project managers have heard every excuse under the sun. That's not to say that things don't happen, life happens. We have had linguists have medical emergencies and not be able to turn something in on time. And in that case, our clients usually are sympathetic to it and we can work around it. But in those cases where we have to extend our deadline with our client, it's important to have some proof, because there are a lot of linguists who abuse this, especially new linguists who don't realize that they've bitten off more than they can chew. So if your dog had a medical emergency, take a photo of the veterinarian's admittance form and send it to your client once you're able to get in contact with them. I hate to sound callous about this, but there are mostly new linguists who don't have it together and will use dramatic excuses like these if they're late without any proof. And seasoned project managers just aren't likely to believe it and keep offering them work because of how often that tactic is abused. It happens more often than you might think. So if we just have to rely on that sort of proof, because this is an industry where you rarely see the faces of the people you work with, and we just don't have that in-person accountability like other industries do. Tip number 4, on email marketing. Email marketing does occasionally work, but it's very likely to be ignored. As I said earlier, spam or scam bots flood our inboxes daily with literally dozens of fake translator applications. So you will be fighting against those if you do email marketing, and it's a lot to fight against. It's usually easy to tell which of those emails are scammers. For example, they will have random numbers in their email addresses, or their emails will be poorly spelled. But we also rarely have a need for the specific linguists that we get emails from. So seeing as we deal in many different languages, at different times we'll have more or less need for different language pairs and different specialties. So say we need something really specific, we're getting a lot of English to German automotive translations or something like that. We will find that much more quickly and reliably by searching prose for that individual language pair and specialty fields than we will by wading through our email inboxes. That being said, I have made contact with plenty of linguists who I haven't been able to work with immediately, and if they seem like someone I'd want to work with, I will save their email address, and I'll save our emails in a separate folder to look at later. But that is few and far between the instances that I find linguists that way, as opposed to the instances in which I find linguists, that we find linguists through online databases. So it's much, much more effective, I would say, to make sure that you're in all the databases, make sure that your specialty fields are well documented, that you have a good CV, and that you're putting yourself out there on those platforms. If you do decide to do email marketing, I would highly recommend using a mass email tool to help you automate the process. I don't have any suggestions for services to use because I've personally never used one. If you want to limit your marketing time, I would recommend foregoing email marketing altogether and just focusing on direct outreach, such as responding to online job postings through databases, or by going to translation agency websites and filling out any contact forms that they may have set up specifically for translators looking for work. If you are filling out just a regular contact form, in other words, one that is not specifically meant for hiring, but just a general contact form on their website, your chances of getting a response from that are pretty low. Not to say that it doesn't occasionally work, but I just wouldn't make that your primary marketing activity. Tip 5, how to format documents. Your ability to format documents is very important, and especially for some linguists who have been working in the industry for a really long time, you may have some trouble getting up to speed with newer technology. Say you don't have a lot of experience. Tip 5, Word. That's a very important skill and something that project managers definitely prioritize when determining who to send work to, because much like quality issues, if you have formatting issues, that creates a lot of extra work for your project manager and extra expense because they might have to get it reformatted. And that alone can take hours. And if you know how to properly format things, it saves you a lot of time. And having things properly formatted means not having to redo all of the formatting later. So we do have a handy guide on formatting documents for the purpose of translation. This includes some standards that are widespread throughout the industry. And that is on our website, www.spantechtranslations.com/translation-instructions. And I know our website looks very early to mid-2000s. We're in the process of rebranding, changing our name, and launching a new website. So we'll have a similar link up then. But yeah, that's important. It's not as important as the points above, but it is something to consider. So now I'd be happy to take some questions and answers. So Giuliano, I'm
Hello.
not sure how you want to go about this.
Yeah, I have some questions already here.
Okay.
I wrote them down. So the first one, actually 2 questions. Do you hire translators without experience? And what tips do you give to those who don't have experience and want to enter this market?
We certainly have worked with translators with limited to no experience. I like to mentor translators who are trying to get into the industry because I think the industry benefits from more good translators. So tips on getting jobs if you're brand new to the industry is first of all, diversify or specialize, specialize, specialize. Focus on your specialty fields. If you haven't done translation before, you've probably worked in other industries before. So dig into your previous experience. If you have any experience with the top specialty fields that I mentioned before, legal, medical, technical, and business or financial, then really, really drill into your previous experience in those industries, because having language ability and experience in an industry is all you really need to get started. And ultimately, your quality will be determined by how well you test. So certainly you won't be as high priority in hiring if you don't have a lot of good reviews and you don't have a lot of experience on your CV, but just try your best to highlight your previous experience in whatever specialty fields that you can to set yourself apart from the rest of the people who say, well, I can do general translations, because there's a ton of competition in the market for linguists who can do diplomas and certificates. And I will say that since I'm speaking, I know, to a lot of Brazilian Portuguese linguists, unfortunately, the market for English into Brazilian Portuguese translations is more saturated than most from my experience. We get a lot more emails in that language pair than in many others. And that might be because we work in that pair a lot, but just be warned that you do have to do more work to separate yourself in that language pair.
Okay, so does someone else want to ask a question by themselves? You can use the microphone. Otherwise, I have some other questions here as well. Egan, would you like to say your question? Oh, I can read it. Okay. Egan Lessa asked, could you give an idea of what you consider to be a good cover letter or first email?
A question, Julie.
Hello, Melissa?
Do you
Hello?
I'm not muted.
Hello, I'm not listening to you anymore. Hello, Melissa?
So
excuse me, I think I got disconnected but returned immediately. So
okay.
I don't know if someone asked something. I'm not sure.
No, I haven't answered the question yet. We established that it seems the linguists on the call can hear me.
Okay, so the question was if you could give a good example of cover letter or first email.
Okay, a good example of a cover letter or first email, I would say for a first email or cover letter, it's more likely to be a first email than an official cover letter. I would say keep it short and sweet. Keep it, how am I forgetting the word? Keep it condensed. So don't use a lot of flowery language. Don't try to impress the hiring manager with a lot of big fancy words. Just, if you can keep it condensed.
Concise.
Yeah, concise, exactly. Keep it within a page. If it's an email, keep it within a few paragraphs if you can. Your CV should be able to speak for itself. And that doesn't mean don't summarize it, but do it concisely. A hiring manager respects it if you respect their time.
Okay, does anyone else would like to ask a question? Teresa, okay.
Oh, hi. Hi, Melissa. I'm in Canada, and I have a question for you regarding, you mentioned CV, but here in Canada we say resume. Mm-hmm. Okay, so in our WhatsApp group, a few weeks ago, I posted a resume that I prepared, and I was so proud of it, because I'm not someone that's very comfortable with technology, but I stumbled upon this website, which you probably know, called, I don't know how to pronounce it, Canva or Canva. Have you ever heard about it?
Canva, is it
Yeah.
C-A-M-V-A?
C-A-N-V-A.
I think it's Canva.
No, Canva? No,
Yeah.
I haven't.
So anyways, it's a site where you can prepare these fancy, like graphic visual resumes or CVs, and you can do other things as well. So I struggled for about 2 days, and I finally made one, which I posted in our group, just to let people know that if you are persistent and you try, you can achieve some results with anything in life. So I'll show you, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And also for those who are new to the group, because that conversation was a couple of weeks ago. So a couple of fellow translators told me that even though it looks nice and everything, but some agencies like yours, maybe not yours because it is small, but oh, by the way, first of all, I forgot to congratulate you on a fantastic presentation. Yeah,
Thank you.
I really enjoyed it. Yeah. I took lots of notes. So some of my fellow Brazilian translators said that some larger agencies, they get lots of emails, like you said. They don't have time to read every resume, so it's robots, or you mentioned bots, who read them. And for some of those bots, all the graphic, they can't read the graphics and all the pictures, so it will diminish our chances of getting the job. So how do you feel about that? Does your company use those bots, or do you read every single resume you receive?
So our company doesn't use bots. We do have a human being reading each and every CV. But I do know that larger companies use bots to scan resumes, and that's in all industries, not just translation. So yes, I would recommend when you make a CV, make it so that the text is searchable, and you can save a PDF with searchable text. If you make a CV, and I know this is probably for the more technologically minded, if you use a program such as Adobe InDesign, then you can create a beautiful looking CV with nice images on it that also has searchable text. As far as if you don't have the programs or the know-how to do something like that, then I would say it's probably better just to create a plain text CV in Microsoft Word and save it as a PDF with searchable text, or just send them the Word document. That being said, I would like to mention something about CVs. Scam bots get CVs from online databases such as Pros. So it is helpful to have your CV on Pros, but ultimately it can allow your identity to be compromised. So it's okay if under CV you say CV available on request in those online databases, but do still in your description put your credentials, just maybe not your whole formatted CV.
Okay, and talking about CVs, are there some keywords that you look for in a CV?
Well, keywords as in buzzwords. I can't speak for larger agencies. I'm sure that larger agencies do have certain words that they look for using their software. Because we don't use that software, I can't speak to what those words are. In our case, we look for just conciseness and just how much experience you have stated and what kind of experience you have stated. So individual buzzwords aren't as important to us as just well describing what your experience is without a whole lot of extra fluff. But in the case, also don't confuse fluff with description. So if you're describing a job, you know, if you worked as a nurse, for example, and you wanted to get out of nursing because it's a very difficult career, and you might want to become a translator, do describe your experiences as a nurse. So that's important information.
Yeah, okay. Someone asked if Portuguese is more saturated than Spanish.
I'm not sure. I don't know the answer to that. We get more emails from Portuguese linguists, but that is just our experience, and we're just one company. So I can't speak for the industry as a whole. I do know that Spanish is also has a lot of linguists vying for projects. Then again, the industry is always growing. So it's not like there's a lack of work, but there is a lot of competition.
Okay, Raiza, would you like to ask your question, or would you like me to read it? You can speak if you want.
I guess it. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Well, you just said that the market is saturated for our language pair, but do you notice a field that could be more saturated than others? Like, is there any field you can't find many professionals, so it would be more worthy that we specialize in it?
A few markets, as in like, are there certain specialty fields that might be less saturated?
Yeah, and others you can't find professionals, even for Portuguese.
There are certain fields like science, and when I say science, I don't mean clinical trials. I mean like chemistry and biology. Chemistry and biology tend to be, those are projects that we don't get as many requests for, but it is harder to find specialists in that field. Same with engineering, robotics, aviation. However, there is the glut of the work that I've seen has been for legal and medical projects. So if you have legal or medical expertise, you should be able to find some work with that. When I say that the industry is saturated, I mean specifically general purpose, non-specialized linguists, or linguists with a lower degree of specialty. So, and I know that's not an easy, it's not an easy fix for, you know, for me to say, go be specialized in something if you haven't been to law school, you know, or like you don't need to be in law school, say you worked as a paralegal or something like that. But I know that it's not just an easy solution to go and be specialized in something, but it's just the nature of the industry as I see it.
Okay, Maria Luisa, please, you have a question? Maria Luisa?
Hi, Melissa.
Hi.
I wanted to know what you think of LinkedIn, and if you have ever used it for outsourcing for linguists.
LinkedIn?
Yes.
LinkedIn, I know some people use it. It's not a tool that we have relied on much to find linguists. I use it more as an online CV, but perhaps that is a tool that we should use more. I'm sure other agencies use it. My philosophy with marketing yourself as a linguist is the more online databases that you can be present in, the more visible you are, and therefore the more likely you are to find work.
Great. I have a question. You said that you have 300 linguists working with you right now. I would like to know, what is the turnover of your translators? How often do you replace them, or do you find new ones?
We actually, once we find trusted linguists, we don't tend to replace them. So we don't like to have turnover. Ideally, we don't get turnover. The times, if we replace linguists, it's usually that they left the industry, or say we have a language pair that we don't have that many verified linguists for and we need to expand it. So I would say we do more hiring than replacing. We don't like to replace our linguists. We have trusted linguists who we've been working with for over 15 years. And we love working with them, and we don't go looking for new linguists to replace them. Other larger agencies, big corporate agencies, probably have more turnover because they're always looking to undercut that bottom line. So, and we've had this happen to us with certain agencies that shall not be named, where we have been working with them for years and we have a going rate, but they need they're always looking to expand their bottom line for their investors. So they're always looking for new linguists with lower rates. So in our cases with smaller agencies and with direct clients, there's not a lot of turnover. With big corporate agencies, there is going to be a lot of turnover, and there's going to be a lot of constant pressure to keep your rates low.
Okay, so does anyone else has another question? People, don't be shy.
Eu tenho uma pergunta, Juliano.
Okay, so Melissa, em português, Edson?
Em português, meu inglês
Melissa,
não é
could you
tão bom
please
ainda.
select the English channel so that you could hear the interpretation?
The English channel, let me see. How do I do that?
You have a small globe below.
Oh, interpretation. I see.
Yeah, and then you select English.
Yes.
Ok. Por favor, Edson.
Posso fazer agora?
Sim.
Entre esses tradutores que ela falou que ela tem,
So,
né?
among the linguists
Há
you have,
uma classificação
is
tipo
there a classification such as
os melhores, os medianos e os
the
nem tanto?
best, the middle achievers, and the low ballers, for example? Do you classify them on such a basis?
E como é que eles sobem de cargo? Tipo, como é que eles
how do they
eles evoluem?
ascend? How do they evolve?
Good question.
Boa pergunta.
Yes. So good question. We have a database where we keep information on all of our linguists, and we do track their quality and timeliness and that sort of thing. And yeah, we will absolutely treat our linguists differently, or not treat them differently, but we'll give them different deadlines or different kinds of work depending on what they've proven their work is, or what they've proven their timeliness and reliability to be. So once you've established, it's much easier to form a first impression than it is to change a first impression. So if say you have turned in some work that is acceptable but not very good quality that they've had to review, and you've already been established as that kind of, or that you've been established as that in the database, the only way that you can change that is by doing more projects and by repetition, by essentially proving otherwise. So, and over time, say you have had a habit of not turning things in reliably, and you decide that you want to become considered more reliable, then you just have to do projects and get them in on time every time for a while. And then eventually the project manager will start to see you differently.
Okay.
But yeah, we do track that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Claudio Nor asked a question. I'm going to read it. If some agencies value the jobs of translators, why do they pay low rates? Or why do some rate agencies have lower ranges for rates? Yeah.
So there are a couple different reasons for this. One reason, the biggest ultimate reason, is price pressures. It's just the nature of capitalism, that especially with giant corporations, that their investors and their clients are looking for, their investors are looking for the biggest bottom line, the biggest profit, and their clients are looking for the lowest cost. So their executives are most beholden to their investors and their clients, and they treat their vendors as lower importance because they see their vendors as more replaceable. So a lot of agencies will continually push for lower and lower rates from their vendors in order to improve profits and or lower their cost to their end clients so they can be more competitive in the marketplace. So and we have had to lower our rates before. It's certainly happened because our clients, like, we'll have established rates with our vendors. If we have to lower our rates with our vendors, it's because the agencies that we're working for are lowering their rates. And in order to keep working in that language pair, we have to also lower it with our suppliers. Because in the cases of high volume, but also more saturated markets, such as the Spanish and Portuguese markets, the price pressures just keep going down and down and down. And we might make a cent profit margin on a given job. And so, or a cent and a half or something like that. And that is getting to the point where it's not worth it to us, it's not profitable or feasible on our end to manage and quality assure the projects, because it is a lot of work on our end too. And obviously each assignment, the translator does more work than the project manager, but we do need to make some margin on that. So if our clients are lowering our rates, we might have to lower our rates with our linguists. We do try to avoid that whenever possible. And again, I'm speaking as a small agency. We deal much more individually and personally with our linguists than a big agency does.
Someone is
and
asking,
there are also price pressures from countries that, there are agencies in India, for example, that put out awful quality work, but they only charge 3 cents per word. And then the corporate bottom liners say, well, we can get this done for 3 cents per word, and then just review it and treat it like machine translation. So those are the pressures that would drive prices lower.
And if the prices go down, how to maintain quality? Someone is asking. Or could you expect also lower quality?
I think that there comes a point below which the client can't expect very good quality. So I think with Brazilian Portuguese, there are a lot of people who do good work at 5 cents per word, for example. And because of how many linguists there are in that language, into English, into Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese, there is a common going rate of around 5 cents per word, and that is affordable for a lot of people living in Brazil. Mm-hmm. However, around 2 or 3 cents per word, you're going to get non-native speakers, probably located in India, Bangladesh, China, who don't actually speak Brazilian Portuguese, but who may have taken classes on it, but then you're going to get non-native quality. And at that point, the corporation is determining, we're okay with getting non-native quality for this price because we can afford to review it, or because our client doesn't expect decent quality. So. Okay.
Malu wanted to ask something else.
I saw less than 1 cent is possible, Melissa.
Hi, Melissa. Good evening. Can you listen to me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Hi.
Yes. Okay. Hi. Good evening. Thanks for being here. It's really helpful. So I'd like to know what's the importance of knowing how to use CAT tools? Is it important for us as translators to know how to deal with them?
I would say it is important. It's not absolutely essential, but it's going to probably significantly affect how much work you can take. especially as time goes on, we're getting more clients who are transitioning mostly or entirely to CAT tools. We have one major client who's responsible for a huge portion of our work, who is making the transition to entirely online memo queue. So I would say, in order to keep up with the industry, I would highly recommend learning how to use CAT tools. I know it's unfortunate because a Trados license costs an arm and a leg, and it's really silly how much Trados charges for a product that has been relatively unchanged for a decade. But it's the unfortunate nature of the industry, and it's not something. We still do a lot of work not in CAT tools, especially in smaller documents like certificates, diplomas, handwritten text, medical forms. Things that are form-based are much harder and less worthwhile to put through a CAT tool. But then the flip side of that is you're going to be more competitive in that market if you're good at formatting. So either way, it's good to learn new programs, whether it's formatting or CAT tools. And yes, I would recommend learning Trados and MemoQ. Fortunately, those two programs are very similar in a lot of ways, but it's a good thing to know if you're trying to keep up with the industry.
Great. Does anyone else has a question? Because we already are over our time, 8 minutes. Anderson is asking, is it common for end clients to order lower quality translation for a proportionately lower price? I think you answered that already.
Yeah, I think they expect a lower price or they expect a lower quality if they're only paying 2 cents per word.
I have a question. Do you test your linguists for other fields or languages over time? Because last week, Gabriela sent me a job that involved French, and she didn't know that I worked with French, and when I told her, she was surprised. So I think I should have mentioned that in the last few years. So yep. do you test translators for new languages or new fields, or do you expect them to tell you? How does it work?
We don't know what we don't know. So it is on you to advertise all of the services that you provide and it's a great idea if an agency hires you to do a certain language pair and you can do others, tell them when they hire you. And they will likely test you. We definitely test our linguists for each language pair and often for each specialty field that they do. So let them know. I would say we put our feelers out there when we can, we put our antennae out there when we can for our linguists who might already be doing something, but we don't default to doing that, honestly. So take the time to make sure your clients know that.
A great tip. So thank you very much, Melissa. I think we already are over our time here. Perhaps we could bring the interpreters outside of the booth. So perhaps they have some questions. I don't know, Otto and Raquel. I'm going to end interpretation, okay? Let me do that. Okay, now it's ended. Otto and Raquel are with us.
Nothing to declare.
Great.
Nothing to declare. Yes, I'm sorry about the beginning that I went to the wrong channel.
You selected English and you were speaking Portuguese, right?
Yes. So sorry.
Okay, that was great. A great conversation with you, Melissa. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to help.
Yeah, we had almost 100 people here, almost.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, thank you all for coming, and I'm very happy to help and give you my points on things, and I'm open for more questions. I don't know what format we should do that in the chat, or if there will be a chat transcript. I will also post those online resources that I mentioned earlier, so you can have the direct links. So
Yes,
Juliana,
I have the links. I have the text you sent me. Maybe I
Okay,
could share it with the students.
great.
Yeah.
So yeah, I suppose, is there a way that I can get directly back to people for individual questions that they might have? Should I just do that over email? I'm afraid of being bombarded.
I don't know. Yeah, I could. Yeah, everyone knows your name. They could find you on LinkedIn, or they know your company, SpanTech, so everyone knows how to reach out to you, right?
Yes, yeah, you can just look up our website, SpanTechTranslations.com. If you fill in our contact form, it goes to my email address, and I will answer you.
Do you intend to
I'll answer any
become?
more pertinent questions.
Do you intend to become a big translation agency in the future because you are small and you are rebranding something?
Yeah, we're definitely looking to grow. We have stayed pretty small for a very long time, almost as long as I've been alive. And obviously I wasn't working for the company when I was 5 years old, but that's a big part of my job right now, and why I'm redesigning our website and rebranding is we're looking to expand. We're looking to get a sales department and up our sales force a bit more. I guess we've been comfortable and happy in where we have been, but yes, we're looking to expand now.
Okay, thank you very much, Melissa, for your great availability, and also you are willing to answer all the questions after this talk. That's
Yeah,
great.
of course. Thanks for having me, Giuliano, and thanks everyone else.
Okay, so everyone, good evening, good night, and we talk later. Okay, bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.